Um, Welcome to all of you at this joint ENVITER ICEVI webinar on relations, intimacy, and sexuality for people with visual impairment, hosted by VCO. Later on, my colleagues Susanna and Sandra, supported also, I know, by Evert, I think, who's taking care of all the technical stuff, which is very important during the webinar. Will share their knowledge with you about this important topic, and will hopefully bring you information that be very helpful to you and your professionals in your organization. We know that over 100 professionals have registered, so no pressure, ladies, today. Apparently, you're covering a topic that's very relevant and very interesting to so many. So I'm very excited that we have this webinar today, and I'm very curious to hear what you will share with us today. So we're looking forward to that. Before we kick off on the content, let me welcome you and explain a little bit on how this webinar came about. Originally, these kind of webinars are hosted by ENVITER, an organization of service providers for people with a visual impairment or who are blind. Many different kinds of organizations are a member, around, I think, over 30 members in around 20 countries in Europe. And the aim of the network is to share knowledge, to share expertise and experience and good practices. And we work together in projects, and we meet at least twice a year. Next week, for example, we'll meet again in Vienna during our Blue Sky meeting, where we will also share again ideas about possibilities for cooperation in the future and future projects. And as I said, the last couple of years, ENVITER has been organizing these kind of webinars on different themes, such as CDI, active learning, 3D printing. And these webinars are received very well, and they were also all recorded. You can find them on the ENVITER webinar website, the webinar links, the links to the recordings. And also this webinar, as you have seen, and as I've also shared with you, will be recorded to be viewed afterwards, and will be placed on the ENVITER website later. As a board member of ENVITER, I can say that I'm very proud that there are so many people interested. I know that there's also colleagues who are joining in another space. So again, I don't know how many people are there, but it's really good to see that there's so much interest. And last year, together with ICEVI Europe's president, John Ravenscroft, we agreed that it would be good, together with the board and our president, Elena Weber, that we should organize and advertise more of these events together and have joint events. And so this is how this started. We said that this could be a really interesting topic, not only for the ENVITER members, but also for all the members of the ICEVI network. And so we hope that there will be many of those in the future, many good events that we can do together. I think it's good that the target group that we work for is relatively small, so we really have to work together in the group and share our knowledge. So I would now like to give the floor to Andrea, who is the Vice President of ICEVI, and maybe to say a few words also on behalf of John Ravenscroft, who couldn't be there today. But I think it would be, it would be good to also hear from you and how you, as other organization, view this cooperation. And I really hope that everybody has a great time during this webinar. I give the floor to you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Yes, on behalf of ICEVI Europe and Professor John Ravenscroft, who is the president of ICEVI Europe, we express to all of you, dear colleagues, professionals, teachers, our warm wishes, and first of all, our congratulations to the institutions, organizations, and experts who will offer this interesting webinar regarding regarding a topic, that it is sensitive, that it is challenging, but it is also very, very important. ICVI Europe is the International Council of Education and Rehabilitation of People with Visual Impairment. It offers programs, services, possibilities to disseminate examples of good practices through the website of ICVI Europe, but also to the ICVI Europe newsletter that I really encourage you to just look at it and maybe have contributions every now and then. We support professionals in the field of visual impairment, so this is why we are also very grateful for this joint webinar, as we believe in disseminating, sharing examples of good practices, knowledge, evidence-based practices, looking forward to projects that will benefit not only our colleagues, professionals, but also people with visual impairment, families, and make lobby and support legislation, methodologies, programs for people who are with the visual impairment, and as I said, families, but also professionals who are in the field. The role of organizations such as ENVITER and ICEVI Europe are to promote these events, these constructive opportunities, but also the networking, the professional networking that we believe so much. Yes, ICEVI Europe focuses on development of programs, but we keep in touch with all the members of ICVI Europe, and we are looking always towards the development of their professional competencies, so that within these networks we can find partners, we can find colleagues, we can find people who can we relate professionally and personally. So let me just again express our congratulations to all of colleagues who worked, in order to make this webinar an event that will for sure make an impact and it will be of great use for all the professionals. So in the end, I just want to wish everybody a very constructive afternoon, and I hope, and we hope also that our cooperation will be tangible and concrete in so many other events that will follow. Thank you for the invitation again to say a few words, and all the best to everybody.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I can only say I completely agree. I think the cooperation is very important, and I think we're up for a very exciting afternoon with a lot of inspiring information. So I give the floor to the team that has been working really hard to set up this program for you this afternoon. So Sandra, can I give you the floor?
Thank you, Andrea, both of you, for the very nice words you gave us. We're here with the team. My name is Sandra, and this is my colleague Yishi. We're both healthcare psychologists, and we work with people with visual impairment. I work with children from 6 till 23 approximately, and Yishi works with adults. So together we would like to tell you everything we know. Well, not everything, but we do our best. And we have Evert here. He's from Royal Dutch Visio as well. He's here for the practical and technical things. Then we have Susanne. She's my colleague in the expert group. And at home we have Bram. And Bram works at the Robert Koppers Foundation. Yishi works at Bartimeus. So these are the 3 organizations in the Netherlands that work together for the people with a visual impairment. And we especially work for the with sexual and relational development in the life cycle of people with visual impairment. We call it RIS, Relations, Intimacy, and Sexuality. And we'd like to tell you a bit about that. We would like to share our ideas, but of course we're also very much interested in your ideas, but this is quite a large group, so it's difficult to invite you all to share your knowledge and your thoughts and your experiences. But we have some moments which we will use Mentimeter to hear your experiences and your ideas. And we also have a breakout room in which you can share your ideas in a small group. If you have any questions, please share them in the chat. Because Bram and Susanne will collect them, and later on during the webinar we will collect them and see what's the best way to answer your questions. After approximately 1 hour we will have a short break. These are some practicalities. You received a worksheet beforehand. Hopefully that helped you to get tuned into today's topic, and you can use it during the webinar also to make notes. And we have a little disclaimer for you, because the Netherlands, yeah, well, Yishi starts to laugh, but I think it's important because the Netherlands is generally known as a country where sexuality is discussed openly, and so where everything is possible. Also on the LHBTIQA spectrum. But naturally, we RES risk people talk quite openly about this topic, and we promote diversity and everything that has to do with that. But we know that even in Holland, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the topic, either because of their cultural background or their religious background or for personal reasons. And today we'll talk about it the way we are used to, but we don't want to offend anyone. So we invite you all to join the discussion, especially in your breakout room, but please feel free to stay quiet and just listen. Everything is okay. We are very glad that you are here today to join the webinar. Did I forget anything?
No, I don't think so.
No.
So let's get started.
We will. We feel a bit like we're presenting the weather forecast for tomorrow or something like that. But that's not what we're going to do, because what we want to do today is talk about sexuality, intimacy, and relationships throughout the life cycle. And what we'd like to do is transfer some knowledge to you. We have a limited space to exchange experiences, but we will try to do that. And this is a very important message to us. We would like to provide all people with a visual impairment with information of all ages, cultural background, and gender. And these are the personas that Visio uses to make, to give you an idea of all the people we work with. So Visio is there for Royal Dutch Visio, I should say, for newborns, and also for the elderly people and everyone in between, regardless of their intellectual abilities, cultural background, everything. Everything is there. Everyone is there. Everyone is welcome. We would like to be there for them all. We have a little question for you. If you can go to menti.com, the code is in the screen, and I will say it for the people who have difficulties reading it. It's 36113800. So that's 36113800. And we'd like you to take a minute and think about the question, what comes to mind when you think about the topic of today? So that's relationships, intimacy, and sexuality, and visual impairment. And it would be nice if you could try to explain it in just one word. So because the Mentimeter will make the words that are used more often bigger, so we can see what's on your mind. You can either use your mobile phone or your laptop for it. I have to switch the screen now. So there might happen something. I'll give you a hand. Yes, there we are. Important, that's the biggest one at the moment. Well, we totally agree with that. I can read taboo, how to express emotions, education, privacy, safety, difficult, other way. It gets more difficult now because many people wrote something down: safety, inclusion, perspective, dare, empowerment, love, problem. Ah, I get the message here that taboo was not readable, but which changed it, so you should be able to read it now. Taboos is also there, so if we add those two, then it's a quite important word as well. So important, safety, taboo, inclusion. I think those are the biggest words, right? Yes. Okay, let's switch to the presentation again. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. This is the program for today. I will tell you a bit about RIS, relations, intimacy and sexuality, sexual and relational development in general, sexual and relational development in people with a visual impairment. We will tell you about materials and we'll show you some materials. In Holland, there's a research project with the name I Don't Know What I Don't Know. And all the organizations that are here today are also participating in the research project. Then we'll have a little break. Then we asked some of our clients to tell us about their experience on the topic. And we are very happy that 4 people shared their thoughts and ideas, and so we can present them to you. Then we have some cases. We invite you all to share your ideas in breakout rooms. We would like to tell you a bit about our idea about tasks as healthcare and educational professionals, competencies, and how you can work with culture and religion, something we have to do in Holland. So I assume that many people out there will have to take that into account as well. This is a sheet full of information, but this is a summary of the vision, the beleid, I'm looking for the English word now, that we wrote together. And our expertise group sets the goal that people, I told you before, aged 0 to 100 and even over, who are blind or have a partially sighted, regardless their intellectual ability, can have social contacts, have access to correct knowledge about intimacy and sexuality, and are given the opportunity to experience this all according to their wants and needs. To be able to gain this, it is necessary for clients, parents, family members, and professionals to be informed about the consequences of visual impairment on connecting to other people and experiencing intimacy and sexuality. We plea for an open attitude and respecting conversations on this topic. That way, a safe environment can be created where questions and feelings can be shared and discussed between clients, parents, professionals, and among professionals. Yishi next to me is nodding because we really stand for this idea. And it's a mouthful, but I think it's the shortest way of saying this to you. And I hope we can explain you a bit more about this today. We'd like to start with the normal sexual development. And that's important because to understand why it is different from the people we work with, you have to know a bit about how it works with average children. So here's a timeline. It stops at 24, but of course, our development continues after that age. And we really plea for looking at this topic during the life cycle. So things change when you become older, things change when you become 45 or 60 or 70. So we'll talk about that later. So in the early years, exploring the own body is an important thing to do. Exploring your wishes and limits, exploring your gender idea. There's a lot going on there. Exploring friendship. And you see that at primary school, children often have their first crush. Don't know if you remember yours, but I do remember mine. Later on, the body changes, and that brings on some insecurity about your own body, interest in sex, or lack of interest in sex. That's also possible, of course. First relations appear and sexual feelings appear. And later on, children or adolescents, that's what I should say, start experimenting with relationships. Also online these days. I didn't do it, but well, I have gray hair, so I'm too old for that. Sexual behavior also online these days, dealing with emotions like rejection, jealousy, love sickness, and relations and sexuality in the media. And you can't really say at the age of 6 it will be like that, or at the age of 12 it will be like that, but in general you can say most children have the same development. So when a baby is born, until the age of 4, exploring is the main word. Body contact is very important. It starts with the baby and the parents, the cuddling, all the skin-to-skin contact you have. Exploring bodies, your own body, but also your parents' body when you have a shower together, for example, or if you see your sibling naked. When you're a bit older, it's all about learning and playing, learning the rules, what is okay and what is not. Playing doctor, which is a very normal way of playing, very normal in the development of a child. Children find out what the origin of babies is, and they find out that boys look different than girls. A bit later on, sometimes it already gets a bit exciting. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she's already talking about falling in love, and she's very much into talking about boys with her friends, and she's very curious what her body will look like when she's a bit older. So crushes, the sexual function of the genitals, friendship, that becomes very much important, very important. Comparison, how do you look like? What do I look like? How will it be later on? And embarrassment also comes along. So you see that children who had no problem walking naked through the house at this time, at the age of 9, will suddenly say, I'd like to wear a wardrobe. Oh, okay, I have to look at the camera. Thank you. I'm very glad we do this with the team. Teenagers and early adolescents feel that embarrassment even a bit more. Sometimes they start dating, they're curious about sexuality, or they feel aversion. That's also possible. Physical changes are there. Social media comes along. That's not really there at primary school, but it starts at secondary school. And then in mid-adolescence, autonomy plays an important role. We'll come back to that later because of the people we work with. That's a difficult topic. Friends will become more important. Social media plays a bigger role. Sexual appeal, who do you think is attractive and why? And most children between 12 and 15 have kissed for the first time. And then in late adolescence, they start experimenting with relationships and sexuality. You find out what you like, what you don't like, your wishes and your limits. And also gender diversity plays a role. That's what we see here in Amsterdam. We live in Amsterdam, especially. Then we get into adulthood. I think I'll just give you the microphone since you're standing next to me.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. During adulthood, we say 25 to 50. Mostly are the people sexual activity have in long-term relationships. Not all, but mostly. And parenthood starts. And during parenthood, some things changes. Most people report slightly less sexual satisfaction, for instance. Some later on, 50 to 70, we call it midlife, hormonal changes start in men and women, like less sexual arousal, bodily changes, all kind of stuff. And retirement. You think, retirement in this sheet, yeah, with retirement, relationships changes because you're not going to your work anymore. You stay more at home, and that changes, gives changes in your relationship. In the elderly ages, 70 and over, health problems starts, and there's more dependency and informal care. You have to take care sometimes for your partner, your love partner, and that gives changes. That in short is it for the adulthood.
Thank you, Yishi. let's continue. Because the development of children with a visual impairment is in many respects a bit different from normal developing children. And these are quotes we collected. We have a lot more, of course. Things that children said. And Sarah, for example, said, how can a male person ride a bike? He has a penis between his legs. And so we sometimes think we are so clear in the way we explain things, but in this case, we were clearly not clear enough. And then we had Max, and he said, a bikini is worn on the hips, right? Because that's where breasts are located. And Lily said, for me, flirting is not very different from connecting to people in general. I come across the same difficulties. And Lily just started university, and I was very surprised that she said that. And she was happy to experience that in this new environment. She felt quite okay with flirting, thanks to all the experience she had with friends. Then we had Sil, and he said, my visual impairment is of influence, of course, but I've become very accurate in flirting verbally. And I asked him, of course, how do you do it? And he said, well, I'll just lower my voice a bit, use different words, talk a bit slower. And that really gave me an insight in the way he's doing it, because I had no idea. And then we had Stein, and that was something else, because he said, is there anyone out there waiting for me? It will probably be a total disaster for me. So you see many ways of thinking about this topic, feeling about this topic. And what we would like to do now is share a video with you. It's made by the 3 organizations, it's a cooperation, and it's a video that explains in short what's different for the children we work with. Evert is trying to give me a message. And he says, okay, I should warn you, the audio can be quite loud, so be prepared.
Nothing can be taken for granted. The influence of visual impairment on relations, intimacy and sexuality of children and adolescents. Everyone has to do with body awareness, getting engaged in relations and sexuality. Also people who are blind or low-visioned or have comorbid problems. We learn by peeking. Blind people can't peek and low-vision people shorten the viewing distance. But looking like that at somebody's bottom, breasts or genitals is not acceptable. And knowledge about the body parts, your own and other people's, and sexual education can open the world. A baby with visual impairment explores his world using all his senses and needs a lot of positive body contact to get to know his body. The baby will find out what kind of touching is pleasant. A toddler will receive more words, for example, when showering. All objects get a name, also penis and vulva. A blind or low-vision child needs a lot of encouragement to explore because he misses a visual stimulus. Taking a bath together with a parent gives him the opportunity to explore the parent's body. Mommy has breasts, daddy a penis. It is vital to subtitle what is going on between other children when it comes to contact, when they touch each other and what emotions are involved. Tell them what is okay to do when touching others and let them explore what they like when they are being touched. Blind and low-vision children do not naturally come into contact with clothes and underwear other than their own. To gain knowledge, it is necessary that children touch and wear different kinds of clothes and underwear, again and again. When children get older, all these themes continue to need attention, always attuned to the child's level of understanding. But also new themes come along. Interest in boys and girls, language at school, sexual diversity and information on social media. Do children know the meaning of the words they hear? Explicit explanation is needed about French kissing, for example, and at what places it is appropriate to do so, but also where it is not. Teach children to close the curtains before they undress and wear a bathrobe when walking through the house. What are tampons and panty liners, and how do you use them? Good sexual education is vital for everybody. For children with visual impairment, it is very important to get to know their own body, to understand sex, to explore wishes and limits, what is pleasant and what is not, and what is acceptable and what is cross-border. puberty, the changing body needs attention. How do you deal with sexuality is also a matter of peaking secretly, which is very difficult or even impossible for children with visual impairment. Adolescents have questions about feeling attracted to boys or girls, about falling in love, about sexual diversity, about the meaning of specific outfits. All that involves a lot of visual information. First relationships develop, but how does that work? When will you have physical contact, sexual intercourse? How do you know what you want and what the other person wants? Again, using your sight is very important here. As a parent, you slowly let go of your children, but it is of great importance to stay present in the background. Even as an adult, all these themes continue to be important. How do you meet people? Online dating is a possibility, but when do you inform the other about your visual impairment? What profile photo do you use? All this can make you insecure. The advice of fellow sufferers can be of help. And what if you have learning difficulties next to your visual impairment? In that case, you face a lot more challenges. Information must be repeated over and over in short and very clear sentences, talking about the here and now. Sexual development starts from birth and continues throughout life, also for blind or low vision children, adolescents and adults, with or without comorbidity. Nothing can be taken for granted.
Yes, that was the animation. I'm very curious what you think about it, but I won't ask because there are too many of you. We'll tell you a bit more, although I think this animation is a good introduction. I believe a visual impairment has a pervasive character. That means that it influences all aspects of life. So it also influences the sexual development and also the relational development. And that's very important to take into consideration, because I have the impression that we do not hesitate to teach children how to tie their laces or make their bed or fry an egg, or the simple things where life find a way when they walk to school, but to tell them how relations work, or to tell them what is normal or about sex or what would you like is something else. And we also found there's a big difference between low vision and blindness. Even if you have a very limited vision, you'll be able to gain knowledge by peeking secretly. And that's a very, very big difference. We also see that the influence of attitude of parents, healthcare and educational professionals, and society is of vital importance. And sometimes we don't agree. For example, I, as a healthcare professional, might have a different idea than parents, and then we'll tell you a bit about that later. It's important to talk about this. We see that quite some children with a visual impairment have comorbid problems, sometimes because of their low vision, because they feel insecure, like you saw in the animation, or they even feel depressed. But also the children with a visual impairment can have ADHD, for example, or autism, and that also influences the relational I can't find the word, but the way they make friends and the way they relate to other people. And we know there's limited research. We have this research project in Holland at the moment. We'll tell you a bit more about that later, but we know there's plenty of clinical knowledge and experiences, and we share that with you today. It starts with attachment. It all starts with attachment, and we see that young children are more often anxiously attached, and that also has influence later on, and it also affects friendships and later on relationships. Creating a body image is something I mentioned earlier. That's a very important start if you talk about sexuality. The difference between boys and girls is difficult if you can't see at all, because it's okay to explore your own body and maybe your parents' body or your sister's body until a certain age. And so it is vital that you give children that opportunity, and sometimes you are simply too late. And they also create a body image by hearing descriptions of others, like the penis between the legs, the example I gave before, sounds they hear, voices they hear, and also sense. Development of play is often delayed, so they lack a chance to pretend play. I told you before about playing doctor, which is a very normal aspect of the development of play. But if you are later, you might want to play doctor when you're 10 instead of 5 or 6, and then it's not so appropriate anymore. So that's something that might play a role as well. We know the physical development runs the same course, but the perception differs. There's a lack of comparison. So the idea of their own body, the idea of the body of other people, that's different. What I found in papers is that parents think most of the time, not most of the time, but many parents think sex education is the responsibility of school. And that means that parents will not talk about it at home. That doesn't mean that this is right for all parents, that this is what all parents do, but we know that some people do, and that affects their children. We also find there's a stigma, and I saw that in the word cloud as well we made together, that people with a visual impairment are sexually insecure, dependent, incapable, and I even read not interested in asexual. I think that's a horrible stigma. We know parents can be overprotective in general, not only on this topic, which is also something I can understand, and we all can understand. But parents can also be avoidant or even averse on the topic, so that's something to take into account as well. Sex education often highlights contraception and sexual abuse and risks. And from the risk group, we would like to focus on, we call it leuke sex in Dutch, and it means something like having fun when you're having sex. So it really depends on who tells you about sexuality and the way the sex education is given to you. What you know. What we also know is that sex education is generally verbal and not explicit enough. So children often appear to not have exactly understood the message or the lesson. So I said it before, we think we're being so clear. Even I would not call myself a risk expert, but I do talk about this quite a lot. And I think that the same is for you, Yishi. We think we are so clear and we take everything into consideration, and still sometimes it's not explicit enough. So that's very important to keep in mind as well. Then we go to the teenagers and the adolescents, because belonging and fitting in is so important for all adolescents. And it's difficult when you're being different. So many children with a visual impairment feel insecure. And we know, unfortunately, that many children are also being bullied. This influences the way you feel about yourself and the confidence you can feel when you make contact with others, when you make friends, let alone if you would like to be in a romantic relation. We know that the adolescents we work with spend more time at home and at school. If you go to a special school, you travel by taxi, and the moment you come home finally at the end of a long day, there's not much time and energy left to spend time with friends. So they lack chances to meet new people compared to normally developing children. Let's also talk about socialization and communication. If you can't see, or if you're very short-sighted, you miss social cues. So you can't peek at peers. You cannot see how other children do things. And that influences your level of autonomy, because many children I speak simply have no idea how to do it. Only hearing something is very different from being able to look at something as well. And in general, they have less access to information and less ability to talk about sex. So social media is sometimes difficult because apps are not available, information is difficult, the access is not good. we know that parents are more reluctant to talk about it. Many children with a visual impairment don't have many friends, and that makes it also difficult to talk about this topic. So you could say that in many respects, this is a difficult theme for the adolescents we work with. Lack of privacy for sex, solo sex, and with a partner. Many adolescents leave home very late compared to normally developing children. And they have parents that are quite, how can you say it? Overprotective, protective. They're very voorzichtig. What's that again? Cautious, that's the word. Thank you. So that's not always meant. They don't mean wrong. That's what I would like to say. They really think they do the right thing to protect the child, but they also limit their development, especially if you think about autonomy. I told you this before, more psychopathology, lower self-image and self-worth, less experiences with dating, romantic relationships and sex, and relatively late experiences with dating, romantic relationships and sex. And we also know from research, the better the vision, the more experiences. So even if you can see a little bit, that will help you if it's about relations, intimacy, and sexuality. And we also know the higher the level of self-worth and disability processing, the more experiences. So that's a topic we focus a lot on. The disability processing is something I talk about with all the children I work with and all the adolescents I work with. And unfortunately, we have to say that they're also more vulnerable for abuse. So this is not really a very happy story, is it?
No, not at all. No.
Actually, no. No. Now we go to the adults. I'll give you the microphone.
That's my field. I will tell you a little bit about adults and elderly people with visual impairments. And Sandra, she told a couple of comments of clients she works with, and these are comments I have heard from the people I work with. Like Ben, 30 years old. Oh, he said, this is what they mean when they talk about wings in commercials. And he was holding a sanitary pad for the first time with the wings. And he thought, wings? No, they can't fly. It's just the wings on the sanitary pad. Or like Anna, she's 25. And she was never, she's 25, but she was never told that the plastic film of tampons need to be removed before use. Can you imagine? I don't think that will feel very comfortable to Anna. And Sanne, she's 29. She said, last week I received an unusual picture on my phone, and she had this photo. The phone will tell her what's on the picture, and the phone told her it's like a picture of a mushroom. But it happens that it turned out to be a dick pic, very different from a mushroom. Or Maarten, 40 years old. My wife and I are thinking about starting a family, but how can I ever take care of my children and be a good father? Or Maria, 82. Since my husband moved to a nursing home, we have never some privacy or time alone. We'll never sleep together anymore. So these are the things I see when I talk to people with visual impairment and about relationships, intimacy, and relationship and sexuality. What's different in adults with a visual impairment, and also in adulthood? Sandra told before, with the younger, with the adolescents, there's less and later experience with dating, romantic relationship, and sex. That's the same in adults, and it's harder to form long-term or shorter-term relationships. Also, you have these questions like Maarten from the previous slide. There are questions about parenthood or heredity. And autonomy and romantic relationships are also very important in the life of adults with a visual impairment. How can I be a good partner? How can I be a good parent? That's what it is. When it comes to elderly people, mobility and autonomy issues lead to more loneliness. It's harder to get to a place where you can meet other people. It's harder to get there alone. So meeting other people or make new friends, make new relationships, it's harder. And even in Holland, I don't know, but I can imagine it's in other countries, it will be the same, exclusion from daycare services. So if you need help or you want to participate in all kind of activities, it's harder because people with visual impairments are often excluded. And there's the informal care, the care for your partner or your loved one. And last but not least, privacy and autonomy in institutional care, like the case of Maria. She wants to be intimate with her partner, but it's hard to get some privacy when you are living in an institution. Now I will show you 2 videos, which will Evert start in. The first one is about the suitcases we have at Bartimeus with all materials we used to we used with our clients. And the second one is made by Sandra, and she will tell you what they have at Visio. Oh, Susanne, I'm sorry. Ready to go?
Hi, ik ben Yishi. Ik ben de voorzitter van de expertisegroep Relaties, Intimiteit en Seksualiteit. En in deze korte video leg ik jullie iets uit over de koffers die we hebben. We hebben 4 verschillende voorlichtingskoffers die geleend kunnen worden via Topdesk en met verschillende inhoud. En ik zal jullie even kort door de koffers leiden. De eerste koffer, daar hebben we er 2 van, die is gevuld met 3D-materialen. Er liggen hier al materialen voor. We hebben eigenlijk verschillende penissen, vulva's. En in deze koffer, schrik niet, hebben we ook nog een hele grote torso zitten van een vrouw. We hebben ze verschillende soorten, maten, penissen, slap en in erectie. En middels deze modellen kunnen mensen die niet goed kunnen zien, kunnen ook goed voelen. Hoe voelen deze materialen, wat kan ik verwachten? En kan je ook uitleg geven over de geslachtsorganen. Nadeel wel, ze voelen niet zo lekker. Ze zijn op dit moment veelal nog van siliconen. Er zijn mooiere materialen in ontwikkeling, maar dat loopt nog. Dus we hopen binnenkort ook wat realistischere materialen te kunnen hebben. En zoals je kan zien, ook bijvoorbeeld, sommige materialen zijn ook niet helemaal in verhouding met de meeste mensen. Dus dat leggen we er ook altijd uit. Deze platen, die zitten ook in deze koffer. Zie je ook nog wat anatomische figuren, waar ook in braille is uitgelegd bij de platen. En kan je ook de platen zelf goed voelen. De volgende koffer is de koffer vol met voorbehoedsmiddelen. Alle soorten, maten. Waarbij we uitleggen, wat is er nou eigenlijk allemaal? Kan je van alles en nog wat ervaren, voelen. En vertellen we er ook bij wat de voor- en nadelen zijn. Daarnaast zitten er ook nog inlegkruisjes, maatverband bij met de zonnevleugels, zodat ook die goed gevoeld kunnen worden. Dan hebben we nog een koffer vol met allerlei soorten ondergoed. Van jong tot oud, soorten, maten, van alles en nog wat. Van babyrompertjes, kinderondergoed, bikinis, zoals deze. Er zit bijvoorbeeld ook een voedings-BH in, die ook gevoeld kan worden. Er zitten allerlei soorten BH's, herenondergoed. Ook de lingerie zit erbij. Van alles en nog wat je kan, wat overal te koop is. Maar dan kan je het dus ook allemaal voelen, merken wat de verschillende soorten allemaal zijn. En als laatste hebben we nog het kleine condoomkoffertje. Waarin eigenlijk allerlei soorten condooms in allerlei soorten en maten liggen. Waarbij je ook kan oefenen met het opdoen van een condoom. Ja, en nogmaals, er zitten allerlei soorten, maten van condooms in. Dus dat zijn in het kort eigenlijk de 4 soorten voorlichtingskoffers die wij bij Bartimeus hebben. En die je dus gewoon kan lenen bij Topdesk.
Yes, and now we have the second video made by Susanne. Yes.
Welcome. In this video I would like to show you which materials we have talking about the subject risks, relations, intimacy and sexuality. We have several games we use at with the children here at school from the age of 4 till 20 years old. A lot of them are board games, and they are very nice if you want to invite the children or the teenagers to talk about these subjects. There are games with cards where there are questions to ask or to try to get a discussion. Why are you, or what do you think about, or what's your opinion about some things? And of course there are games where you can win or lose, but on a nice and way to play it. Then we have several books for very young children. We talk about this subject with young children from 2 or 3 years old, starting at that age. They start with friendship, talking about feelings, stories about toddlers, how they play together. But we also have books for adolescents, teenagers, also for parents, and a lot of poems about this subject we also discuss with them. We have one book I'm very proud of. It's made by Visio Bartimeus and Robert Koppes. It is a special book, which is the subject is talking about your body, and specifically for girls the vulva, but also it's discussing boundaries, friendship, and it has increased text and high contrast pictures, so it's more accessible for our children and people to use it. Then we have also podcasts. We use podcasts to talk about subjects, several subjects, and at last we also have 3D printed materials. We're still developing them, and I want to show you a material from a vulva. In this video, I showed you which materials we collected in our organization, talking about the subject, relations, intimacy, and sexuality. And I would like to encourage you all to look in your own country or organization which materials you maybe already have or you can find to talk about this very important topic.
Then there are 2 small things I would like to mention about the videos you just saw. We have the suitcases. Then on the video, I told you about the suitcases we have at Bartimeus, but here at Visio they have them too. And from the second video, Susanne, she told us about the books, and the special book you saw, we have also that one in an audio version. But now to the next one. We are very proud that we are part of this research. I don't know what I don't know. The goal of this research, because it's in not only in the Netherlands, but in all the world, we don't know a lot about. We don't have actual good education materials on this topic. So the goal of this research is to create a blueprint of sexual education for people with a visual impairment, and it focuses on the blind people to make adaptation for regular sex education programs. This research is a partnership between the Fontys University of Applied Sciences, Bartimeus, Robert Koppes Foundation, Royal Dutch Physio, Zorgbelang en de Ongeziene Blinden. That are all experts in experience. Informants in this study are young adults with a visual impairments, healthcare and education professionals and parents. The target audience of this research is adolescents aged between 12 and 18 years old with average intelligence. And the teams collected by now are developing proper tangible material, developing a body concept, being a worthy partner as a person with a visual impairment, acceptable touching or being touched, nonverbal communication, and asexuality. And in the next slide, there's a picture. It's not for everyone very good to see maybe, but there are some prototypes or trial versions of the new tangible material, and it's still in development, but these are the first ones developed. By now we have talked a lot. You've seen some videos, but it's time to stretch the legs, go to the loo, get some coffee or tea. And in 5 minutes, we would like to see you back. Thank you. Welcome back, you all. I hope you are really refreshed to start again. Okay, so let's move on. Welcome back. We asked a couple of clients of us to tell us about their experiences according to relationships, intimacy, and sexuality. And this is what they said. And Evert, he will start an audio of 4 clients. They're also on the sheets, but here's the audio version.
I have found my way in dating and flirting through trial and error, but I must say that my visual impairment still is of influence. It started with flirting. In the past, I found it really scary to talk to a girl, and I therefore often lost track the moment I had to think of something nice to say. The main reason I felt so uncomfortable is that I had a lot of trouble to look decent because of my visual impairment. I assumed nobody would be interested in a guy with a white stick and a flowing beard looking like Quasimodo. All these things, all these insecurities were there because of my visual impairment. Everything is different now. I feel comfortable when I flirt since I've learned how to trim my beard, have adopted an upright posture, and since I started using my white stick. Of course, it still can be difficult to have an idea on whether someone is looking at you or not, or to see a girl is running a hand through her hair. The chance of getting turned down is still bigger. But by starting a proper conversation, you can always find out if somebody fancies you. For me, taking my visual impairment into consideration means being extremely assertive. I tell people what my limits are, what I can't do. But I naturally also tell them what I can do, what I'm good at. Also in a relationship, for me, it is unpleasant if my girlfriend turns on the light and it is too bright. My strength is, I explain to her it is too bright and that it affects my level of energy. And when flirting, I try to aim my gaze at people and pay attention to my posture, so people won't have the impression I'm low visioned. In a relationship, communication is key, and when flirting, a touch of self-confidence can't do any harm. And it's also vital to be clear and honest about your visual impairment. When flirting or dating, don't dress it up. Being in a relationship is in many respects not difficult when you have a visual impairment. However, I encounter some difficulties, like the fact that my girlfriend and I will never be able to drive a car, and we always have to ask for help, always and everywhere. Again, communication is key. And when we walk the street, I sometimes walk in front of my girlfriend to protect her from bumping into things. We have also to take our energy level into account, and we use fixed places for things. But apart from that, my visual impairment doesn't affect our relationship. And actually, We don't really talk about it because it has become so normal to us. We simply know how it works for each other.
My visual impairment affects flirting, dating, and relationships. This is because when someone flirts with me and gives a wink or makes a visual gesture, for example, I don't often see it and I don't notice it. Thus, it often seems that I'm not interested. But on the contrary, I often am. It also affects dating and relationships since I don't see everything, I don't dare to do everything, and I have to watch my energy level. During a relationship, it is sometimes difficult to express how you feel because the other person does not know how things are and can sometimes do things that scare you. For example, walking the dog together and then running home already as a joke, without communicating and realizing that you can find it difficult or can't do it. I have learned about this part that communication is the key. And if something does not work or does not go well, indicate this and ask for help instead of continuing to simmer. So my solution is to keep communicating from flirting, dating, and getting into a relationship. And if you think someone is flirting with you, but you don't see it, and you are with a friend, ask the other person if that person also thinks that they are flirting with you.
I'm not able to make eye contact, and that irritates me when it comes to dating and flirting. I can only see anything when I am really close, and that is a burden to me. When I meet someone and want to get to know the other person, I can only see that person from a very close distance. I know that gives the person an uncomfortable feeling, so I won't do that. Even when I come really close, I can only see the color of someone's eyes. I can't see facial expressions. However, I can feel the facial expression. It's hard to explain. I feel a spark in my own eyes, and then I know that I am exchanging lovable looks with the other person. Sometimes I don't know if someone is flirting with me, and that gives me a very uncomfortable feeling. It makes me think, does he fancy me? Sometimes it appears not to be so. I talk about sex quite a lot with my boyfriend. What do you like? What do I want? We talked about that even before we started making love. We created our own way of communicating. We use special words of which only we know what it means. We really feel each other. We have a strong connection and know this is okay and this isn't. We canoodled a bit at first, and then we slowly went further, step by step, with respect for each other's wishes. We experience with new things, make sure it is exciting. That is something that comes natural for us. I can't watch films and therefore don't have any examples. I've got no idea what most people do. I get it all out of myself. I don't have a script. I use my own fantasy, and that is even more fun. The only disadvantage I can think of is that I don't know anything about standard positions, like 69. That can make sex clumsy. I have a vague idea of what it is, but I don't know exactly how to do it. We can laugh about it, and I think it's actually quite funny. My boyfriend explains what we should do, and then we just do it, or we don't if one of us doesn't want it. I never felt unpleasant or uncomfortable with him. To be honest, I don't know much about relationships between people who don't have a visual impairment, and I'm not really interested. I've had a visual impairment my whole life, and I hold on to what I've got. My boyfriend also is short-sighted, but his sight is not as bad as mine. I can't have eye contact with my boyfriend, so I can't express my love for him in a visual way. I know we are more clingy than most people, and I know this sometimes irritates people around us, but is our way of communicating, our way of feeling intimate, and I enjoy it very much. Before I started having sex, I did have an idea how a male body would look like. At school, it was explained to us during the biology lessons. They didn't use tangible materials, but I haven't missed it. When I was younger, my parents already explained things really well to me. They are very open-minded, and when I was a child, I sat on my father's lap and we hugged, of course. In my opinion, I've had enough sexual education, but I learned the most from actually having sex.
Engaging and entering into love relationships when you are visually impaired is in most cases very difficult and is hardly ever talked about. When you enter into a relationship with somebody without an impairment, you always develop a certain dependency or inequality, at least in my experiences. Of course, you can compensate in your relationship, which is something many blind and visually impaired people already do in their day-to-day lives. I feel that within a relationship, this is something you should not aspire to or want, because when in a relationship, you should be able to be completely yourself. On the other hand, you might engage in a relationship with somebody with an impairment. That might be advantageous because you don't have to explain, compensate, and you can be both equal to each other. Although, by choosing this route, you might limit yourself in many areas, such as the people you form a relationship with, or certain practical issues. All in all, your question has stirred up some thoughts with me personally. It is a good thing that you are paying attention to this, but at the same time, I find it quite confronting that the attention is apparently needed.
Well, they can tell it a lot better than we can do ever. And we are very happy that those four would brave enough to share those their thoughts and experiences with us. But now it's time for action, and you can come in action. What we want to do, we have 2 cases prepared for you, and we would like to that you read the cases. There are 2, and in breakout rooms, we will divide you in breakout rooms of groups around 6, 7, maybe 5 people. And for 20 minutes, you can decide together, please swiftly, because it's only 20 minutes, with the people in your breakout room, you would like to, which of the cases you would like to discuss. Maybe you have time enough to do both. Okay, but first, think it over for yourself for a couple of minutes and then take notes. And please feel free to share your experience and insights in the chat afterwards. And the cases, they will be on the next slide, but also in the chat. So maybe you can make a print screen, but they're also in the chat afterwards. So we have 2 cases. The first case is a toddler and the second case is an adult. So for the younger ones and the adults.
Yes, and all of you should be there again. Hopefully this worked for you, because we saw that some breakout rooms were empty and some only had a few people, and we seem to have some ghost participants. So I hope that was good for you. We have 20 minutes left. Please feel free to share your questions in the chat. Susanna just told me that there has not been any question up till now. Well, it is possible, of course, that we are so clear in our story, in the things we would like to tell you, that you don't have any questions, but we can't imagine this topic doesn't raise any questions. So please feel free to ask them. Use the chat. And we'll start with the last 20 minutes. Susanna asks me to remind you that the camera, some of you still have the camera on, and that the recording is still running. That was a practicality. Then we would like to talk to you about our task as a professional. And according to us, it's our task to provide well-timed and well-coordinated information, positively stated, open and concrete, focused on solo sex and sex with their partner, according to the choice and pace of the client, matching our professional position. And we really think the last sentence is very important here, because we believe not everybody needs to be able to talk about this, but that comes later. What we saw in the beginning was that many children with a visual impairment have difficulties with friendship as well. So if you focus on social and communicative skills in general, the chance is bigger that they will have positive relationships when they're later on. So please focus on that at school, in individual therapy, at home, everywhere. The more they can practice with it, the bigger the chance they'll be good at it, at least good enough. Focus on variation in social situations to provide experience with friendships and later with relationships. As I told you before, we see that many children with a visual impairment mainly spend time at home or at school, and that's it. Sometimes it's difficult to join a sport club or another club, but we know that it is vital to have some variation in your social situations to practice. And I told you before, focus on disability processing. And what we mean by that is make sure your clients can talk about their visual impairment, make sure they can tell the other people what they see or can't see, what they need to be part of what's happening there, that they can ask for help, that they know about their energy level, things like that. I think we heard some nice examples in the stories our clients told us. Give children, adolescents, and young adults the chance to ask questions and gather information. We know that knowledge makes them stronger. And this is an important part, because like we told you before, talking about sexuality and relations is not so easy for some of us. And we understand it's still a topic that has some taboos, but we know they have a lot of questions as well, and they cannot ask peers as easily, because they most children with a visual impairment have less friendships than the generally developing children, and we know that information on the internet is not accessible to all of them. So please give them the chance to ask questions. And normalize sexuality. Realize that this subject is part of life from our clients in every stage of life, and that they are more vulnerable because of their disability. We started with saying that sexuality is a topic that is important throughout the whole life and the whole life cycle, and that it's very normal, very important. So what you should do is make this, well, according to us, we're not telling you what to do, of course, but we think that it's important to make the subject discussable in your own style. It's important to remain true to yourself. I said, we don't think everybody has to do it, but we do think that it's our duty to look at the needs of the people we work with. So if it's a difficult topic for you, maybe your colleague is able to talk about it, or maybe a neighbor, or maybe an auntie, or someone else. And if you do talk about it, remain true to yourself. You don't have to talk about everything. Use the knowledge and experience you have with your own target group. What I mean with that is, if you know a lot of children with autism, for example, and a visual impairment, it's more easy to talk about them or talk with them because you know in the basics what they need, or how they think, or what is something they might think is difficult. So use your general knowledge and your general experience of the people you work with. Sometimes it helps if you mention that it might be an awkward topic, because it can all make us feel uncomfortable. And if you do that, you normalize it. So don't be afraid to say, "Whew, I get a little bit hot," or, "Oh, wow, I don't know which word to use, for example. Should I use penis or should I use piemel?" That's Dutch word we use. And if you can laugh about it, if you can make it a little bit lighter, then it's more easy to talk about. And we also think that if you use a current event, conversation is more easy. It can be a starter for a conversation, and it's very different if you say to a child, "Okay, sit down, let's have a conversation about sex," or that you say, "Did you see what happened on the television show earlier?" Or if you mention something in the papers or in the news. Use material supporting your conversations, or do something together. That also makes it easier. If you have tangible material, that can be a way of talking about it. If you take a walk together, it might be easier to talk about it instead of sitting in front of each other at a table, for example. Or playing a game like Susanne showed you, that can make it more easy to talk about. And then ask lots of questions to discover what knowledge, thoughts, and assumption a client has before you provide information. I think that's vital, because we all have ideas in our head because of the things we read, because of the things we hear. And if you're blind or partially sighted, you might not understand everything. So it's vital to ask, what do you know? Who told you this? How do you think about it? Why do you think this? Or where did you hear this? So you know on what level you have to start giving your information and where you have to make adaptations. And especially if you have a child, for example, with an intellectual disability or autism, then it might be extra important to ask a lot of questions. And I sometimes, well, most of the times, I literally say that. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but I would like to understand you as good as I can. And then most people think it's okay. Ask for help or support when you feel uncomfortable. That's what I said before. I think it's better to ask a colleague to help you than to avoid the topic, because this is not a topic to avoid. And to make use of existing materials and publications. Susanne showed us this very nice book we made together, but even normal books you can use. You can use the text, you can enlarge pictures, for example. You can play the games, it can all make it easy. People have thought about this. We don't have to, well, we would say in Dutch, we would say we don't have to invent the wheel. I don't think that's an English saying, but it means don't spend time making something that is already there. And then this, working with culture and religion. Be sensitive to cultural and religious diversity. Be open to new information, gain knowledge by reading, by asking questions to people you know, but do not generalize or make assumptions. This sounds very normal, but we know it's sometimes very difficult. We work with people from various backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and religious backgrounds, and it always plays a role in how they think about risks. So be aware of that. Talk to your clients, to your students. Be interested. Be really interested, and listen very carefully. And our suggestion is to follow a two-track policy with respect for the culture and the religion, the values of the family or the student you work with, and make sure you take your responsibility as a healthcare and educational professional. Offer regular education where possible and make adaptations where needed. And Susanne and I were invited to talk about this topic at the International Week in Breda in Holland this spring. And we had this great example from a lady from Uganda, Scovia is her name. And she told us that in her culture, it's normal to have your sexual educations with your aunt or uncle. She was not particularly happy with that because abuse is one of the risks if you do it that way. But she also had the feeling that if she would be very critical about it, people would not be open to information about sexuality in a different way. So she chose this two-track policy, that she had respect for the traditional way and also offered to have some sex education at school and to give the children the chance to get other information in another way. And they were given the chance to identify their own wishes and boundaries, and also were given the chance to feel what is okay and what is not. And we would like to work like that as well. Susanne, do we have any questions? No? Okay. Then we're here for the eye-opener. We're nearly at the end. We would like to invite you to go to menti.com again. And we have one question for you. Could you please share your personal eye-opener with us? We can learn from you all. And although it's not easy to speak with 50 people online, I have the feeling that I'm making radio the last 2 hours. I have no idea who has been listening and who has been looking. But we invite you all to share your eye-opener. And the code is, I'm sorry, I forgot about that, 74944772. So that's 74944772. You can go to menti.com on your laptop or on your phone. It works best if you use one word. I see some things coming. Educational, awesome. Should we try? I don't know. We should try. I don't know how to understand this. But thank you for sharing. I'll share the code again for people who tuned in later, 74944772. Susanne will share it in the chat as well. I'll give the microphone.
The things I see is freedom, tangible models, new horizon. Awesome, that's nice. Freedom, teamwork, really nice. Just time. Just type what comes up to mind. Continue. Teamwork. Nice. Thank you. Educationals mentioned again. I can see. Really nice. Thank you. I go back to the PowerPoint now. Susanna just told us that there's a question in the app. It might be uncomfortable to talk about your questions when we're still recording. So Evert will stop the recording now. And so you can feel maybe a bit more at ease if we talk about the questions you have.